Poilievre is once again taking aim at Prime Minister Mark Carney's personal wealth and making allegations about possible conflicts of interest. This comes after the Ethics Commissioner disclosed some of the details of the assets Carney placed in a blind trust. And Carney has also set up a series of conflict of interest screens designed to prevent him from making decisions to the benefit of his former employers.
We finally got a look at the Prime Minister's many financial interests. There is a cornucopia of conflicts of interest in these investments, like we have never seen before from a Canadian Prime Minister.
Carney's assets are worth millions of dollars spread across dozens and dozens of companies, but the blind trust and conflict screens meet ethics standards, and they are consistent with the past practices of Liberal and Conservative governments. But we're going to start there with the Power Panel. Lisa Raitt is a former Conservative cabinet minister. Brad Levine is a former national campaign director for the NDP. And here with me in the studio, Vandana Cotter was an advisor to former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Good to see you all. Brad, let's start with you. What do you make of this? We knew Mark Carney has means. He's a successful business guy. He's complied with the law. And now that we have some details, a call for him to sell everything because he's in a conflict of interest. What do you make of it?
Well, it's interesting listening to Mr. Poilievre come out and provide a new standard for him to apply to Mr. Carney. That similar standards, for example, Nigel Wright, former chief of staff to Prime Minister Harper, when Mr. Poilievre was in that government. At the end of the day, it's very granular about blind trusts, screens, all these kinds of things. I think the real issue here is does working with the Ethics Commissioner and meeting a bar, is that good enough for most Canadians? What Mr. Poilievre is doing is he's saying, well, that's not good enough. I want a new standard on top of that. We keep changing the standards. Certainly, Mr. Carney has a tremendous amount of wealth. I think for Canadians to judge whether or not he's done all this, they're going to see, is he complying by the rules set out by the Ethics Commissioner? I think that bar is being achieved. Is there really any direct conflict that he's going to really make decisions based on enriching himself? Do you think really that's why he got into this position to begin with? I don't think so. So If you take a look at all the issues that Canadians are facing, we've got Trump, we've got tariffs, we've got wildfires, whether or not Mr. Carney is exceeding the expectations or the rules that the Ethics Commissioner themselves are putting out, I don't know if Mr. Poilievre doesn't have other issues that he should be maybe dealing with this upcoming week.
Lisa, I saw you shaking your head a few times as Brad was talking there. Why?
Well, because there's a binary choice made by the public office holder at the very beginning of this process. And if you have holdings that are going to be subject to conflict of interest regulations, your choice is either to, one, divest or to put in a blind trust. That's your decision-making point. The Prime Minister chose to go with a blind trust. As a result, everything that flows from that moment in time, I think, is fair game in terms of questioning whether or not the blind trust is holding, whether or not the conflicts are things that can be managed, because it is put to him, and I'm being very clear on this, he made the choice to not divest. That's one of the options that is given. If you don't take that option, you do open yourself up to criticism and to being watched as to how clearly and quickly and safely these conflict of interest holds or these contract of interest screens are put in place. I think it's completely legitimate for Pierre to point it out. I think it's legitimate for him to point out the fact that they could have divested as well as easily and avoided all of this discussion, but he didn't.
But the blind trust counts as divestment under the Accountability Act, right? You can divest in one of two ways, it says in the legislation, sell or use a blind trust. So it is divestment. Sure,
that's the point. That's exactly what I'm saying, though. What I'm saying is he had a choice to either liquidate or to keep in a blind trust. He chose not to liquidate. He chose to put in a blind trust, therefore opening himself up to criticism on how that blind trust is going to actually be carried out. And I think that's fair game. And I think it should be tested. And I reject the notion of saying, well, he seems like a really nice guy and he doesn't need the money, so therefore everything should be okay. The law is blind. right? This is supposed to be something that you look at without actually putting in a person's character at the end of the day. You have to abide by the law. He's chosen. Most people choose the route that he took, but most people should also expect to have those things questioned, including the fact that it's 103 different screens, which can be complex. Doesn't mean it can't be done, but it does mean that you're going to get questioned on it. And I don't have a problem with this route at all.
Gotcha. Okay, Vanda, your thoughts on this?
I mean, I hear Liz's point. I just don't think it benefits Mr. Poilievre in this regard. And I think the reason is because most Canadians understand, and ethics commissioner has advised on this, that he has an ethics screen to them. I know it's complex, and I think it's meant to be complex because I'm sure there's a lot of holdings there of some sort. But I would say that I don't think that's what Canadians are thinking about. I think they're thinking about, to Brad's point, tariffs. They're thinking about the cost of living. And I think for Mr. Poilievre, I mean, I heard his interview with Catherine Cullen, and I thought it sounded like he has grown a lot. He was talking about Conservatives are here to help support the government, to help protect Canadians against these tariffs. And that sounds better. But when I saw the sinister sounding statement of it about, like, you know, he like, it's like a secretive type of, like, as if he tried to like slip it under and so no one would notice. I think that's why Canadians get tired of politics. They don't want politics for the sake of politics. They do want people to ask the right questions and to raise points that are legitimate. But I think in this regard, I don't think it benefits him in any way. I don't think most Canadians would pay attention. They think they know that there's an ethics screen. The ethics commissioner has said that was fine, and I think that's enough for them.
Well, so on this, because Brad mentioned, sorry, you want a quick rebuttal there? I want to show something from the archives, but did you want to jump back in?
I know what you're going to show from the archives, so I'm going to be stepping on your point.
Yeah,
but I was just going to say that being around long enough allows you to actually experience this before in another way. In October of 2010, it was my friend Wayne Easter, it was Dominic LeBlanc, it was lots of different people asking the same questions about conflict of interest screens to Nigel Wright at the time, and we defended it. So it's turnabout is fair play. If they could ask the questions back then, we can ask the questions today.
Well, I was a younger man with hair in St. John's, Newfoundland when all of that was happening. So, but I want to play part of an exchange. Yeah. This is at committee, and Stephen Harper's chief of staff at the time, Nigel Wright, very successful businessman, came into public service with a lot of holdings and had to set up some of the mechanisms similar to what the Prime Minister is going through now. He was at committee, and one of the MPs asking him questions was a young man from Carleton Nepean at the time. Just have a listen to this.
Can you explain the purpose behind the blind trust?
This blind trust follows a form that was created and drafted by the Ethics Commissioner. I transferred all of my controlled assets into the blind trust in late October. The blind trustee is the legal owner of them all now, and I'm not to have any communication of any sort, no direction, no advice, no information about what's in there. I do not know and will not know what's in there.
There seems to be some misunderstanding in the way that this has been debated by some members. We have to recognize that there are going to be people in this world of public service that come from different backgrounds that obviously the government interacts with, but that is a strength for our country.
Okay, that's from 2010. We went back 4 years earlier, too. The video for this doesn't exist, but the transcript, this is another committee appearance where Mr. Poilievre, who's the Nepean Carleton MP at the time, debating with Duff Conacher from Democracy Watch. This is when the Conservatives were bringing in the Accountability Act, and he defends blind trust, saying we would not know anything since it's a completely blind trust, so we would not know what we held. That's why it's blind. You would have no knowledge that you owned it, so how could you possibly be voting in favor of your private interests if you didn't know what those private interests were? Brad, that sounds like a vigorous defense of the ethics laws that are in place, which were criticized today as not being sufficient.
Well, yeah, and what Mr. Poilievre is suggesting is that there are two paths you can take. You can liquidate, or you can do the blind trust. When a conservative is up on the stand, then blind trusts are completely legitimate. They're 100% secure. Canadians have no concerns whatsoever. The decisions are going to be made in the Prime Minister's office that would enrich the individual in question. But then, of course, when Mr. Poilievre is in opposition, only liquidation is the way to go, and blind trusts open the floodgates open to miss. It's hypocritical, obviously, because if they are both legitimate, they're legitimate in 06, they're legitimate in 2010, but in 2025 they're no longer legitimate. He was in government. He could have gotten rid of the blind trust and ensured he was in government for many years. Mr. Poilievre was. He did not take the time to eliminate the blind trust as an option. Now we've got two options on the table for Mr. Carney. He chose the blind trust route, and unfortunately for Mr. Poilievre, that's not convenient politically. So he now has to criticize it. But what he can't do is suggest that blind trusts are good for Mr. Wright, Mr. Nigel Wright, back in 2010, but they're no longer legitimate for the Prime Minister. Maybe he could make the case that for staff there's one set of rules and electeds there's another set of rules. But Mr. Poilievre, after all the years in government, never made that case. And I think Canadians are just going to put up their hands and say, listen, as long as the Ethics Commissioner is there and he's abiding by the rules, they're probably not going to have too big of a deal with it unless they already had a problem with him being rich. They probably didn't vote for him back in the federal election anyways.
You know, Vandana, I take Lisa's point that the Liberals played silly bugger in the past, so they can expect some. So, you know, that is the way partisan politics work. But, you know, it's important for Canadians to have a sense of, like, the ethics guidelines that the public office holders are expected to comply with. And I go back to that Nigel Wright exchange in 2010. He said the blind trustee is the legal owner of them all now, meaning his assets. That's the way it works when you put it in a blind trust. Pierre Poilievre said today that the Prime Minister lied when he said, I own nothing but cash and real estate. Now, that's a statement he made after he put things into the blind trust. So, like Nigel Wright said, in 2010, things had moved there. I mean, this is complicated stuff, and 99.9% of Canadians will never have to deal with it. But it is a system that, for the most part, is rigorous and seems to work.
It is rigorous and seems to work. And this is why the question isn't the issue for me. I just think, as leader of the opposition, I'm not sure why we would take time on this, especially because, listen to anyone working in politics, watch your receipts, right? And I just think that there's so many other things he can hit the government on. Like, you can talk about tariffs, you can talk about the cost of living, you can talk about things, especially having, like, you're running for a by-election, you want to keep your status as the leader of the Conservative Party. But I just think there's no point in trying to litigate on this, because you're right, it is a vigorous process. People don't understand the Ethics Commission. They know he exists. They know he's also called into account different politicians from both sides of the aisle, so that it is people I think do believe that. So I just don't think it's something that is worth his time to raise if he's trying to get attention for his party.
Okay, Lisa, a quick last word on that, and then I want to switch to the other topic. Anything you want to add?
Yes, of course it's worth his time, because there is going to be mistakes made in the next 2 years, and he gets to point back to this point in time when he indicated that this was going to be problematic. And number two, I know that we've gone down the path of judging Mr. Poilievre on everything he said in the past. When Minister LeBlanc comes forward and defends the choice of the Prime Minister, I hope that you read back to him his Hansard when he went after Mr. Wright on exactly the same topic, and ask him whether or not it's something he should be doing. Is it hypocritical of him now defending the Prime Minister when in fact he went after Mr. Wright in the past? And I think if you're going to do that, then that's fair ball. If not, you're beating up on Conservatives where they don't need to be beat up on.
Okay, I mean, Mr. Poilievre raised the issue today. This is why we're examining this issue today. So, so that, like, he put it on the table. We've got to look at it and assess it. So that's what we're doing today.